Even though my brother Derek is 3 years younger than I am, he was the one that first expressed the desire to become a priest. And without me knowing it, maybe that had an influence on my vocational journey as well.
I needed my life to mean something. And I guess, who do you go to when you're looking for future issues than to God? Okay, Lord, what do you want me to do with my life? And the answer came quite powerfully back to me. Be a priest. I first considered becoming a priest probably around 3rd grade. When I was born, I had a number of health issues. I wasn't originally expected to survive. Thanks be to God, I did. I had severe anemia. I was a bilateral hair lip and cleft palate patient. It meant that the front end of my upper lip was missing. My nose was collapsed. The upper roof of my mouth wasn't present. All of them from something that happened maybe in utero. And it meant that I couldn't eat. My chances of survival at that point were slim. In fact, I was baptized the day after I was born because there was a serious concern that I wasn't going to survive. With the help of Dr. Collymore and his team, they were able to do an amazing job of repair that I'll be forever grateful. It has given me the opportunity to come to this place in terms of my vocation, because having survived that particular trial, that's kind of what motivated me to give thought to why I was alive and what my vocation should be. There I was in grade 3. Why was I thinking about the rest of my life? Because I thought, well, God must have saved me for a reason. And I was wondering what that reason was. And hopefully I could give back to God some recompense for the life that He had given me, that it would be worthwhile. So it's really that background that motivated me to give serious thought at so young an age to what I should do with the rest of my life.
Really, my brother Derek had always wanted to be a priest. So even though I'm the older one who entered the seminary and was ordained first, he's the one that maybe had the call and spoke about it first. So there was a kind of an expectation in the family that he would become a priest because he spoke about it at a young age. I never really spoke about it so much because even though I was always a person of faith, and faith was probably always the most important thing in my life as far back as I can remember, I was kind of a scholar, a good student, always wanted to do well, got through a series of academic awards all the way elementary school, junior high school, high school. I had a desire to achieve. So I expected my life would go in another direction.
Well, Derek, as a little boy growing up, always had an interest in a religious vocation. So it was no surprise to us that Derek would choose a religious vocation.
We just prayed, and we just, sometimes children change their minds, so we didn't take a lot of notice. But the prayer life was always there. Damian gave us a bit of a shock when he said he was doing philosophy and theology, and I thought, well, this is kind of strange. But I had in the back of my mind, it crossed my mind that he might become a priest, but at the same time, I didn't think he was going to.
Maybe I would end up in teaching or counseling or something like that, maybe research. I always expected, like I said before, I'd be in a helping profession. So I kind of put any thoughts about priesthood on hold until I got towards the end of my university life, and a guidance counselor suggested to me, why don't my idea was, I suppose, let me pursue my field of studies in psychology, see if that worked for me, and then if it didn't work out or I felt unfulfilled or unhappy, consider priesthood. And she kind of turned the whole situation around and said, well, why not pursue priesthood? And so I actually genuinely considered what she was saying, took her advice, went to see the local bishop in the university town that I was in, Antigonish, Nova Scotia, was really impressed by Bishop Colin Campbell, the local bishop at the time. He gave a catechetical series that really inspired me, and I began the application process under his guidance to study as a seminarian for the Diocese of Antigonish, Nova Scotia, because I really felt that's in a way where my vocation to the priesthood was born.
My interview with the seminary and their vocation director went well, and in fact, he was quite happy to have me. My interview with the Archdiocesan board for applications didn't go so well, and in the end, they had the overriding vote. So I didn't end up going with the Archdiocese of Edmonton. At the time, I began to think seriously, what should I do next? I didn't want to be someone running from seminary to seminary, kind of knocking on doors, who will accept me? I really looked at my application to Edmonton as the application. I've done it. God gave me a call. I answered the call. The answer looks to be no. I guess that's the end of that.
We were quite disappointed, and I personally was quite upset and mad when he was rejected in trying to get entry into the seminary in Edmonton. But we kept praying for an alternative way out for him, and we got that way out by Derek eventually going to the same seminary that his older brother Damian attended in Scarborough.
He led the way in terms of putting a good impression of the family for all those at seminary. So later when I would come along, they certainly had a positive view of me, at least initially, from the experience they had with my brother.
My father was a little bit more, not so much resistant, but surprised. But then after I had celebrated a family wedding a couple of years after my ordination, he came to me in the sacristy after Mass and said to me that now he really understood that I was doing what I was meant to do.
I was so impressed by the way the parishioners there had accepted Father Damian, my son, and had welcomed him and compared him to a lot of other priests that they had previously. And they had spoken so highly about him and thought he was such an excellent priest, and they wouldn't ever want to lose him. At that homily, when I listened intently to the way Damian conveyed the message across to the congregation, I realized then that it was a gift and a special talent, and that was his true calling in life.
Prayer was the most important thing in our lives when the children were small, because that's all I could think about, is that we'd have prayer, and they studied well, and they did well at school. But the last boy, he got to go out a little bit. And when it was time for the rosary, like any time they were out, they would always be home in time for the rosary.
Rosary as a family became an integral and important aspect of our daily life, became a part of our daily routine.
We prayed the rosary every day as a family for over a decade. That had an influence on me for sure. And I always believe that God calls you where He needs you to be. You know, He nurtured my faith in Trinidad, in Alberta, through my university years in Nova Scotia. But even though I initially thought He was calling me to serve as a priest in Nova Scotia, I understood later that He called me through my university experience, through my initial stage as a seminarian for the Diocese of Antigonish, eventually to be a priest in the Archdiocese of Toronto. I would never have planned that route myself, but you know, love knows of reason, of which reason knows not, and God has a plan that unfolds with our cooperation that we only make sense of sometimes later on in our lives. One thing I will say about Derek is that he's always been an avid reader, and he remembers what he reads, particularly when it pertains to matters of faith and church. And he articulates what he reads and what he knows and understands very well to other people. He's a gifted teacher that way. The parishioners of his parish community have said that to me themselves. So oftentimes when I'm looking to get answers to specific questions, or I will turn to him, and he often provides me with the research material I'm looking for. So I do admire his knowledge and the fact that he's so very well read, and he always has information at his fingertips to answer just about every theological and current affairs question anyone might have.
He has been an inspiration because, of course, he was ordained first, and he set the bar, he set the example. But I have to admit, he is extremely successful at engaging people in his relational ministry. He's very, very good at it. And he's also very good through his homilies at being able to touch the heart of his parishioners. And I think he's been that way from the beginning of his ministry, and he's still that way now. And it certainly has been a source of great success for him, but also, I think, personal reward. I think the most satisfaction I get is probably in teaching, in passing on the truth of the faith and seeing people respond to that truth. Right now I'm working at the funeral home, so I see a lot of grieving families, and I'm happy to help them. I've also worked a lot in hospital ministry in the sense of being on call to the hospitals in most of the parishes I've been in. For me, the most reward is to see people light up to the truth of the gospel. That's kind of what kind of motivates me. I guess if I had to think about a Bible verse that maybe I've often used, would probably be 1 Timothy 3:15, which speaks about the church as the pillar and bulwark of the truth, or pillar and foundation of the truth. Because for me, my connection with the church, with Christ, with the faith, obviously being brought up in an active Catholic family has been important. But intellectually, it's been the reality of the truth, that it's true, it's real, and that I can put my whole life behind it because of that reality. So I think 1 Timothy 3:15 probably best expresses the sense I have of my own vocation and what I'm called to do in that vocation.
You know, sometimes people have asked me the question if, as a priest, I'm lonely or I miss the companionship of a spouse. And to be honest, in the seminary, particularly during my years of parish internship, when the Sunday celebrations came to an end and I would go back to the rectory by myself, and I would see families leaving together, there was a kind of a thought that maybe I would experience some loneliness or a yearning for that kind of spousal companionship in my life. The Lord has always put special people in my life, in every parish and in every ministry I have ever been connected with. And life is fulfilling for me as a spiritual father, as someone who walks a journey of companionship, spiritual companionship with hundreds of other people, literally. And life is busy as a priest. To be quite frank, there are times in my life now where I wish I had a little bit more solitude and alone time.
In a certain sense, I am happy where I'm at. Now, maybe that's a grace of God. Maybe God has formed me in such a way that that desire for marriage and family isn't there in quite the same way. I'm quite happy to have, if you will, my more extended sort of grandparent view of family in terms of looking after my parishioners. You know, they're there in the church and then I can send them home. But no, God has been very good to me in this sense. I don't have a burning desire for a spouse. I don't have a burning desire to raise a family and children. And so I think that's a gift for me, that I'm quite okay with being single.
In my own life and ministry, I have come to see celibacy as an integral call to priesthood. I don't have any big theological explanation for it. I just simply think that in the world today that hungers for Christ without realizing it sometimes, and in a very sexualized world that we live in right now, a celibate priest is a witness to Christ and a very powerful witness to love in an age that needs to see that we can have that kind of witness faithfully lived out.
Living a religious vocation as a priest is also very difficult in the modern world. To put two of those challenges together seems to me very, almost a burden. So certainly for me, celibacy is not a burden. Celibacy is the gift of having openness to time, to doing what needs to be done.
Almost every time I go into the sacrament of reconciliation as a confessor, somebody experiences some powerful experience of God's healing love. Many times people are coming for devotional reasons, but there's always someone who seems to come because they haven't been there for a while, or they're working through a particular difficulty, and they need to experience the Lord's healing love. You know, our priestly ministry is very busy. Oftentimes when we hear confessions on a Saturday, we've celebrated other masses, we're getting ready for the Sunday homily, there are other things that are happening. So to be quite frank, sometimes by the time I get into the confessional, I'm a little bit exhausted, and I'm thinking, maybe there's other things I could be doing. And it's a reminder to me almost every time that the Lord brings someone in who absolutely needed to be there. And it's a message to me that that's why I absolutely needed to be there.
As a parent, you have to be fully supportive of the desires and the goals of your children. Always be supportive. And what is important is the foundation for their education, the foundation for the religion starts in the home.
We have a mission that isn't going to be complete until everyone on the planet has embraced Jesus Christ as Lord and Savior. So the call to mission, the call to go out, the call to serve Christ, the call to preach the gospel is always there. And the message that I need to remember, that all priests take to heart, that everyone in the world needs to know, is that last part, that the Lord Jesus is with us, loves us, will never abandon us. He's here with us through good times and in bad. He'll be with us to the end of the age.
I'm very happy to present my greetings to Shalom Ministry and all the good work that you do around the world in fulfilling the dream of the Holy Father that all should hear the love of God. Thank you for your good work and those who support you. May these special days of new evangelization bless your operators, your administrators, and your benefactors. God bless you.